Hello, what's up, everybody? Good to see y'all in here again. Hope everybody has had a good day despite the insanity going on in the world. Yeah, so it's been definitely a crazy week, but it's uh, gotten even crazier. A few hours ago, while I was getting ready for things to talk about, I saw this thing where members of the Doge thing that Elon put together are under investigation for taking some kind of information from Social Security, I guess our Social Security numbers and all of our personal information, and turning it over to some kind of organization that was trying to influence the election somehow, like overturn state elections. Now, that's one thing that they got busted doing, but they had their hands on that data. That is so sketch. Especially, I found out that multiple of them were working for Palantir, which is pretty crazy. So I'm gonna dig into that in a minute. But yeah, I think later this week, I'm going to be able to share a preview of the next video I've been working on. It is about the history of government drug smuggling, basically. And I have pretty much the intro done. So I think I could share that. And I have to make some edits to the Cold War video because they're hitting me with some copyright stuff for some really, really old footage. But I'll deal with that. But yeah, I guess I'll get started on this story. This came out just a couple hours ago, I think. I guess 2 o'clock this afternoon. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. That's the only kind of drug smuggling, really, is government drug smuggling. They're at the top of it all. It, unless you're small fry, you're probably working for the government. So yeah, Trump administration concedes DOGE team may have misused social security data. So this headline is like really burying the lead. They're like they need to work on their headline game. I don't know if you remember the Free Thought Project. I used to write for them back in the day, and we had a very strong headline game. You got to get the juicy headlines. And that is not capturing the essence of this story at all. Uh, Two members of Elon Musk's Doge team working at the Social Security Administration were secretly in touch with an advocacy group seeking to overturn election results in certain states. And one signed an agreement that may have involved using Social Security data to match state voter rolls, the Justice Department revealed in a newly disclosed court papers. Mouse is dead. I got to get another one. Elizabeth Shapiro, a top Justice Department official, said SSA referred both DOGE employees for potential violations of the Hatch Act, which bars government employees from using their official positions for political purposes. Like, I feel like there are so many more crimes wrapped up into this. This, I don't think, has even really gotten much news play yet because it came out late in the day. But I think tomorrow it's probably going to be a big story because there are already Congress people demanding deeper investigations now. Um, yeah, let's see. Shapiro's previously unreported disclosure, dated Friday, came as a part of list of corrections to testimony by top SSA officials during last year's legal battles over Doge's access to Social Security data. They revealed that the Doge team members shared data on unapproved third-party servers and may have accessed private information that had been ruled off limits by a court at the time. Shapiro said that the case of the two DOGE team members appeared to undermine a previous assertion by SSA that DOGE's work was intended to detect fraud, waste, and abuse in Social Security and to modernize the agency's technology. A lot of people were saying at the time that this had nothing to do with trying to find waste and had everything to do with the immense value of the data contained in the places that he was trying to get them from. And the other thing is Palantir's key product that they provide is is gathering data from different sources and um, providing it to whoever their client is. And in this case, it would be the government. So that gathering all this different data from all these different places and putting it in like some kind of matrix or whatever the hell you call it, it is basically what they do. And I feel like this could make them extremely much more powerful than they were. And I would be willing to bet that data was copied by everybody who had their hands on it. Let's see. SSA believed those statements to be accurate at the time that they were made, and they are largely still accurate, Shapiro wrote, adding that at this time, there is no evidence that SSA employees outside of the involved members of the DOGE team were aware of the communications with the advocacy group, nor were they aware of the voter data agreement. So, yeah, this was the agreement that he signed. Shapiro, a longtime DOJ veteran, said it's not clear whether either of the two DOGE members, who are not identified in the filing, actually shared data with the advocacy group, which is also unidentified. But she said emails suggest that DOGE team members could have been asked to assist the advocacy group by accessing SSA data to match to the voter rolls. That is quite convoluted. The White House and SSA officials did not immediately respond for requests for comment. Shapiro also revealed that Steve Davis, a senior advisor to Musk and Doge's team, was copied on a March 3rd, 2025 email that included a password protected file containing private information of about 1,000 people contained in Social Security systems. It's unclear, she said, whether Davis ever accessed the file. That sounds sketchy. It was copied. Like, it's unclear, she said, whether Davis ever accessed the file, and Shapiro said current SSA employees have been unable to access the file to determine precisely what it contained. Though SSA stands by its claim that DOGE never had access to SSA systems of record, it's possible that some of the restricted data derived from Social Security systems was sent to Davis, she said. Huh. Yeah, I mean, it's looking sketchy for sure. Exactly. The big balls guy, that is I wonder if he was one of the people involved with this because they don't name who it was. But yeah, it does seem like they changed the password on the file, which is definitely sketch. Also, among the corrections, DOJ revealed that a DOGE team member was briefly granted access to private Social Security profiles even after a court prohibited it. Shapiro said access was never utilized, and in another instance, a DOGE team member had access for 2 months to call center profile that contained private information. It is unknown at this time whether any private information was accessed. This is just for so, and they say that like, why do they keep on repeating that? And then in the middle of it, they say this is how it probably was. Um, they, if you remember, they barreled down the doors of multiple agencies to get information. Uh, so yeah. Cloudflare is not approved for storing SSA data. All right. So there's that. And then I saw shortly after that article came out, there was a announcement. I'm not sure if I'm too familiar with John B. Larson, Connecticut. Not not familiar with this guy. But yeah, let's check out what he has to say. Larson Neal demand full criminal investigation into Doge leak of private records to Musk associates and immediate congressional action to safeguard Americans' privacy. Today, the House Social Security Subcommittee ranking member John B. Larson released the following statement after the Social Security Administration admitted in court that Doge employees tried to hand over sensitive personal records to an unnamed advocacy group. Okay, that's the thing we saw, seeking to overturn the election results. Traded confidential data on an unimproved private server and sent confidential information on about 1,000 Americans to Elon Musk's top lieutenant. Why 1,000 specifically? That's weird. Like, are these like 1,000 people that he doesn't like? That's something. I'm not sure what's going on there, but it's definitely weird. Um, let's see. We've been warning about privacy violations at Social Security and calling out Elon Musk DOGE for months. I mean, they are pretty much disbanded now, but that's why. Like, I never really felt like they were trying to do what they said they were going to do. They just like broke into these places, stole all the data, and then gave up a month later. Um, let's see. Republicans blocked every effort to hold this administration accountable. Let's see. The thousand sent 1,000 personal records directly to one of Elon Musk's top consigliatories and shared the confidential data of Americans on a private server. The DOGE appointees engaged in this scheme who were never brought before Congress. Okay. Okay. So this is like just demanding a full investigation because this, I think the Social Security Administration is still part of Trump's administration. So they admitted that there was some kind of sketchy shit going on. So there's definitely something up there. Let's see what anybody else has to say. Cool. Then we got this came out a couple months ago, but I still think it's super relevant because this was being talked about at the time. Um, Working with the Trump administration, the data company could be used to target the president's opponents. This was back in June when, Palantir really started to come into focus in the Trump administration. I mean, we knew it before the inauguration essentially, but they became a lot more public, I think, because wasn't that around the time of the military parade or something like that? And I think it was that they were involved in that somehow. I think it was something like that. But either way, it was getting a lot of press at the time. And I want to go through here because it talks about how couple members of DOGE actually worked at Palantir. Let's see. Behind their concerns, which Palantir called misguided, lied several who are behind Palantir's selection for the project, starting with Elon Musk. So, what project they talking about? Since I skipped down here. Oh, okay. So they're talking about the immigration thing that they're involved with, and I have an interview to bring up on that later because I think there's some important points. Um, but it says at least three DOGE members had worked with at Palantir, the Times reported, while others had worked at companies funded by Peter Thiel, investor and founder of Palantir, who still holds a major stake in it. So that I think is sketch. And then there's the thing. So they're helping the Trump administration, especially with this massive surveillance network that is supposedly just for immigrants. I mean, even if it is just for immigrants, it's still like unethical. But they, in this interview, say that because people voted for it, it's ethical. Like 50% of the people who voted apparently voted for Trump, maybe, and that that makes everything okay in their mind. So, what if Trump suspends the election or something like that? I'm not saying that is going to happen. I'm saying what if it does? Will they continue to work with him? History shows that they probably would, considering that Netanyahu has suspended elections for how long now, and they're still working with him. So you know, if what the critics are saying are true and this is the beginning of like something really sketchy, then they're a part of that. And yeah, so I think that was definitely important to bring up. Let's see if there's anything else interesting in this article. I know that that was the main thing, just to point out. Yeah. Let's check out this as well. This is a interview from before we get into the new Palantir one. This is from Democracy Now! Back when that was happening, and this kind of talks about what they were trying to build, or at least on the surface. I think that what they say they're trying to build, they are building, but I think that they're using the data for much more, obviously. Let's see.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We end today's show looking at how the Trump administration has tapped Palantir, the data mining company founded by the billionaire tech investor Peter Thiel, to compile data on people in the United States for a master database, including a new $30 million contract with ICE to provide near real-time visibility into migrant movements as it seeks to arrest 3,000 people a day. We're joined right now here in New York by McKenna Kelly, senior writer at Wired, where her recent articles are headlined DOGE is building a master database to surveil and track immigrants. And also DOGE is busier than ever. And Trump says Elon Musk is really not leaving. So if you can lay out what we know about this master database and Palantir's contracts with ICE, and let's be clear, we just mentioned Musk leaving, but actually not really, right? Musk and Thiel founded PayPal together, these two billionaire bros, tech bros, and now Thiel's company, Palantir, what it's doing.
Yeah, sure. So just a few months ago, we started hearing about databases within DHS and IRS, SSA, across government being linked together. The purpose at the time was very unclear, but from my reporting and reporting that I've done with my colleague Victoria Elliott, we've learned that it seems as if this is a process to mix data from government agencies that immigrants often report to. So IRS and tax data, all these kinds of things that can track their most recent addresses.
So yeah, this is crazy because the whole thing with having the data in separate agencies, that is kind of a safeguard against tyranny to some extent, because you know, when there's less communication between those agencies or communication is slower, it actually ends up being better for people. So the fact that under the guise of modernizing the data at all these agencies, they're connecting it together, which is making all of these government agencies much more powerful. And that is not, that's really sketch, especially with the authoritarian ways that they're already using it.
And things like that into one database that already, USCIS has a tremendous amount of data on anyone seeking, any kind of to immigrate into this country. And so the Palantir process with its software foundry basically becomes the window for all of this data and allows folks at DHS and maybe even at other agencies, we're not quite sure yet, to submit queries and to find information and link it together about folks all across the country.
And what kind of checks are there on this merging of data systems?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, at this point, we don't really know for sure what the checks are. In some cases, these contracts haven't even been signed yet. And right now it's a big idea that is playing out within agencies, individual agencies. So we've seen it, this unification of data process happening at IRS. There's been some discussion about bringing it to SSA and DHS, but it's still very much cropping up in individual agencies, and we haven't really heard exactly if there is some kind of master plan and how that could be regulated and what oversight would look like in this case.
And for those people who are not familiar with Peter Thiel and his
yeah, that is sketch. So I have this new New York Times interview that a couple pieces are pretty good. It's pretty short, that just came out this week, of one of the executives at Palantir. It's not the crazy founder,
probably the most controversial thing that
but it's this other dude. Let's speed this one up a little bit. And this is, I don't like this interviewer guy. He's like one of the worst people at the New York Times, but he was the one who made Peter Thiel sweat real bad and start to choke up when he asked him if he thought humanity should continue to exist. He's like, I don't know. But yeah, let's see. I'll flip around to some of the parts I remember, especially where he said it's okay if people voted for it. I think that's definitely just an excuse. You could pretty much say that anywhere because even everywhere has fake elections in some way or another.
Palantir software is being used for right now, I would say, is for immigration enforcement with ICE and other organizations. Can you talk a little bit about how Palantir software is integrated there?
Yeah, certainly. Well, first, I think a lot of the controversy moves with the politics. We first started working with ICE when Jaime Zapata, an ICE agent, was assassinated in Mexico in 2011, I believe. It's either 2010 or 2011, under the Obama administration. And we've worked with ICE from then on until the present moment. The work is structurally very similar. It's like there's information that DHS has access to that are spread out across the component agencies that humans are trying to look up. They're literally doing searches in all these systems. So how do we enable them to actually see the whole picture and then use that for resource allocation? So
I remember this was one of the things that they kept on complaining about after 9/11 and stuff. And because they were saying that all of the agencies couldn't talk to each other, and that was their excuse for not paying attention to the 10 million warnings that there were about that situation that came prior. They kept on saying, oh, well, our agencies can't talk to each other, and one police department doesn't know what the other police department's doing, and the CIA doesn't know what the FBI is doing, and all this type of stuff. And in that case, they were just talking about like investigation files, not necessarily all the data on every human on the face of the earth. Although there are many of us who were worried about that since then, because there was a straight line to this. There's a lot of people I saw like on the mainstream news and stuff. They're like, the Department of Homeland Security was not supposed to be like this. And many of us are like, yeah, it was. We told you when Bush rolled it out initially that this was going to eventually turn into something like this, or it had the potential to. And here we are.
Where do we have threats? Where should we be allocating people? How do we prosecute removal operations? That's, in many ways, exactly what we're doing.
So a couple of things, right? So number one, I think Palantir, you have a $30 million contract to build a platform called Immigration OS. So what kind of data that's available to enforcement and removal operations?
So encounters at the border,
right?
Asylum applications or the lack of one, applications for benefits. So a lot of this data really relates to non-permanent resident, non-U.S. citizens who are interacting with various facets of DHS as they come here.
So it's data on specific encounters they have with Border Patrol, criminal justice system, and so on. But does it extend to things like last known address? Is that the kind of data
when it comes to what was the address they reported in the border encounter? What is the address they reported when they applied for benefits?
Right. So then that becomes the kind of data that if ICE is doing a raid, they end up using, right? To say, okay, we have this person here and so on. So so it is sort of effectuate.
And there have been reports of them eerily knowing where people are, both undocumented people and activists too, because there's some kind of activists are factored into their system for sure. And they have been bragging about how they're taking pictures of all of the observers now and feeding it into some kind of database, which they're saying they're going to try to press charges against them. But, people are just filming and stuff for the most part. You can't really, unless you violate that law or change that law and violate the Constitution, which is not out of the realm of possibility.
Being raids through that mechanism. To what extent does it go beyond that? Like, is there integration with local law enforcement, for instance?
I don't believe
this stuff. Okay.
But I mean,
right.
I think the real question is zooming out a little bit. We're working with agencies that have lawful authorities. So what data are they collecting? That's the data we're helping them integrate. So if there's a lawful authority for them to collect the data, I don't think local law enforcement is part of this. I'm not saying I have an objection to them being part of this. I'm just saying that.
No, I'm just trying to get into, I mean, I think the sort of the core fear that people have about, well, there's sort of two layers of fears that I think people have with this kind of domestic data collection, and that are distinct from people who just oppose deportation. One layer, which as far as I can tell is sort of overstated or wrong, is that Palantir is, again, going out and devising.
We have no data.
Right. You're not devising systems to acquire new forms of data for the government.
Correct.
Right. But you are creating systems where the government has access to data, and I think this is important, on a scale that no government has ever had access to before, right? Like, one of the unique features of 21st century America, digital age America, is that, it's just so much easier to track and observe people in.
There's a part here that is very interesting that he actually, I mentioned it earlier, but he says it to the guy's face, and you could see how he kind of squirms out of it.
All kinds of different ways. And corporate America does that even more than the government does, right? But
I think so. I don't think that's the fundamental inflection, though. I think it's really that the number of decisions you're trying to make are growing much more quickly than your headcount is growing. So let's just say in the ICE case, you would have had roughly on the order of 20 systems that you would have to manually go search across. How many times?
If you're trying to find the address of someone who you want to deport.
Right. Do you think you're going through all 20 systems? Maybe you stop at 10, maybe you forgot to search some systems. So the entropy is just that you're not actually able to do the work. You're fighting your tooling the whole time. And this sort of leads to the lack of legitimacy of the institution. It's like you're not able to do the thing that you're actually supposed to do. Of course, the complexity of this is growing as you're asked to do more and more. It's like, maybe I was doing 10 things before and I could do with the people I had. Now I have to do 1,000 things. That means I clearly don't get to all 1,000 things. And the things I get to,
he's trying to change the subject with this rant, and I'm pretty sure he's brought back to it in a minute by like the cold hard facts of like, yeah, people are worried about all of this being in one place.
Not doing them well. It's like, okay, well, why are we using the human to search 20 different systems? That's clearly a problem the technology can do. How do we use the human to do things that are uniquely human that require human judgment?
Right. I guess I'm just saying that I think for at least some people, and maybe I'm among them, there's a kind of relief in the idea that all of this data has multiplied so quickly that people can't, that sort of authorities can't quite keep up with it, right? So if we walk outside of this room and enter, Midtown Manhattan, we are under constant surveillance. Now, it's not government surveillance, right? But there's a kind of relaxation that you can feel where you're like, okay, but all of this surveillance is, distributed across so many different public and private entities. And unless I am literally a terrorist, the odds that people are going to be constantly watching and scrutinizing me are very low. But then the fear becomes, well, if we have this incredible way to make it all more and more and more efficient, then maybe privacy does start to disappear. I don't know. What do you make of that?
There's two thoughts there. One is, well, are you saying that you feel safer because the institutions that are supposed to protect you are structurally incompetent? And that's the part where I feel like
the answer might be yes, sometimes, right?
Yeah. And then a consequence.
So this is interesting. His way of wiggling out of this is saying that the government structures and the institutions are incompetent, which is entirely true. But then later, when he tries to justify his, reason for doing something which many people consider unethical in building this, spy net for ICE, he rests on the institution of the political system and says that people voted for this, so it's okay. So if the institutions are incompetent, you can't really use that as a justification for what you're doing. And that's the justification that he uses in a couple minutes.
To that, which, I think a democracy can decide. A consequence of that is that they also can't do their job. They can't protect you from the things that they're supposed to protect you from. So I'd offer another solution to this, which is they should be really good at doing what they're doing. And we should have a strong ability to oversee that they're not doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. That's exactly what we designed Palantir to do. So this wasn't our system, but I think it's an illustrative example because it was high profile at the time. If you go back in time, there were government employees who looked up the passports of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and they got caught. How did they get caught? The system they're using generates audit logs. People were reviewing the audit log, and did you have a permissible use to look this up? The answer was clearly no, and they were quickly caught and terminated.
Right.
And so you have to both help the people who are protecting us, and you have to empower the people who are watching the watchers, so they also have asymmetrically strong technology to ensure that there are no abuses.
So he is talking about a fictional world that doesn't exist. Nobody watches the watchers. There's nobody, especially in this administration, to make sure that the people in positions of authority that have their hands on these levers are actually being ethical. So this kind of imaginary thing that he puts forward is totally non-existent.
Who is watching the watchers? Like, so we can stick with immigration enforcement, right? So presumably there's data and information that is protected by privacy that ICE is not supposed to be accessing, right?
So the first line of defense is on the front end. Like, do you even have authority to have this data? So, the lawyers on the front end you have data use agreements that they have with their own interagency data use agreements, the authorities they collected the data to begin with. And then the second line of defense is after they have the data are you using it for permitted use? And that's usually, I don't know, for every agency, this is, look, I'm a builder, so you consult a policy person, but something like the Office of the Inspector General, right. Other law enforcement agencies that are responsible for this. Sometimes, depending on the context, it can actually be counterintelligence. It's the same infrastructure that you would use to make sure that people aren't abusing the data is how you would also make sure that, you don't have a spy in your organization.
Right. In the end, though, it is up to the people running those institutions to decide
That's
whether,
right.
Whether to basically track abuses at all, right? So
I'm shocked with how, like I said, I'm not a fan of this guy, but I'm shocked with. I gotta say that this interview and the Peter Thiel one was actually, in a couple places he held their feet to the fire, which really kind of exposed a couple of things. And yeah,
and it might be at different levels in different agencies, but like presumably in the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem would have the authority to, track or not track abuses to some degree. Right?
I mean, yeah, I think that's a little.
The main thing is not allowing them to wiggle out with one question, because this happens a lot on the mainstream news. People will ask a question, they'll give the wiggle answer that they already had prepared, and then they'll move on to the next question. The best thing that these reporters can do is reword the question and give it right back to them.
A little bit of a nihilistic view. I mean, there's statutory requirements on this. So I think there's a fundamental question if, I understand the perspective. I don't agree with it that, hey, we can't trust these institutions at all. It's like there are rules. They follow the rules. They're also humans. They're infallible. But I don't think people are like willy-nilly deciding whether they want to do this or not.
No, I don't think so either. I'm just trying to frame what I think are the most commonplace criticisms and critiques and worries about how this technology is used in the context of, the second Trump administration. I think from the point of view of someone who is a skeptic of Palantir might say, well, in the end, you are putting a lot of power into the hands of people that, this person who thinks Donald Trump is a threat to the republic, right, doesn't trust, right? So there is just a way in which you, independent of what you think about Trump himself, when Palantir goes to work for a government, U.S. government, any other government, you are putting yourself in the position of trusting that government with this very impressive technology that you've built, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. You have to pick your customers.
Right. So can I just ask then about that process? Because I think it's sort of interesting. Like how do you calibrate that kind of decision making? Like, so just recently, the UK, United Kingdom, rolled out a plan to have a new digital ID. And I believe the head of Palantir in the UK said, we don't think there's enough privacy safeguards here, and we're not going to cooperate with the government on this. So that's like an exact example of making this kind of sort of practical but also moral decision making. What
he's throwing him a bone here?
kind of thinking goes into a decision like that?
Well, I'm probably not the best person to comment on as the CTO, but I think I'd have to go back to the quote. I think what Louis Mosley said was that this is an issue for the ballot box.
Louis Mosley is the head of Palantir in the UK.
That's right.
Right.
So, look, there's a lot of discursive interaction both internally at Palantir. There's an obvious threshold question of, is this a legal use? Is this a government that you trust and work with?
Right.
And then beyond that, it's really a question of like, are the authorities there? What's the potential for misuse? Are the protections there in our software against those potential abuses? And is the work actually going to lead to something meaningful?
See, that's really interesting though, right? That he said it's a matter for the ballot box. And again, I know you're not running that decision, but it's still, as an outsider to the work your company does, it seems like he or the larger corporate enterprise made a judgment that, basically a political judgment, that the digital ID issue had not been adequately litigated by British democracy for you to cooperate with it. That's kind of a fascinating decision.
You should talk to Louis about that.
Right.
I would give you the other side of that, which is I think a lot of the policies, a lot of things that people are struggling with right now.
He wiggled out of that one too. You should talk to Louis about that, and then talks about something different. Because he's trying to get out of him, like, you are being accused of dealing with shady governments, even though he's a Trump guy, I'm pretty sure. He and the other thing is now with the way things are going with Europe and everything, the world is increasingly looking at the United States as a threat. So here is this company who is involved with this on this level, empowering this regime.
I think in the US were voted on at the ballot box. What ICE is doing was voted on at the ballot box. So
Palantir, again, not that you speak for everyone at Palantir, but Palantir is more comfortable with mass deportations in the context of a world where Donald Trump campaigned on mass deportations and won than it might be in a world where he had not mentioned deportations.
Thanks, Zombie. I appreciate that. Anything racking up the chat is always good. Much love.
All, and then asked Palantir to design a mass deportation abetting software.
What I'm saying is, like, the people voted on this.
Right.
That seems like a functioning democracy there. And of course, there's going to continue to be discursive interaction and disagreement. That's the beauty of our political process, but it's an important distinction.
Yeah. How do you think about that with foreign clients? Like, obviously, Palantir does work for the state of Israel. That is, again, obviously a source of controversy. But so you're making a judgment that Israel is a morally appropriate partner.
Yes.
Do you do work with non-democratic governments?
We do work with the U.S. and our allies. It really, the nature of the work depends, particularly.
He didn't say no, we don't work with dictators. He said we work with the U.S. and their allies. So, yeah.
Thinking the coalitions that are fighting terrorism, the coalitions that are pushing back on the great power competition that we're in with the big four.
Yeah. But so would you be, if the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia called you up and said, we just want to build a digital ID system, you would be less likely to do that work because they're not a democratic government? Would that be fair?
I would leave that up to Alex to figure out. It depends on their uses. I'm not sure that's exactly fair. I mean, is it leading to a more efficient electronic government? What's the purpose of it is the question. There's a difference of which agency's doing it and what is their mandate. What data do they have? How are they trying to, what are the workflows they're trying to enable?
But from the beginning, right, just again, in the name, from Lord of the Rings, right, you have this idea that you're building a technology that in the story the name originates from is used for good and for evil. I'm just interested in the extent to which that kind of judgment is, more than most companies, woven into the kind of governmental work that you're willing to do.
I mean,
So yeah, I think that was quite interesting, even though most of the interview was him trying to wiggle out of answering the hard questions. I think that the fact that he was so evasive is very telling. And also, the way he deflected on that dictator's question and said, we work with the U.S. and their allies, how they justified, the actions that the government that they work for is taking as, just the whole voting thing, and it wrapped up in that. So yeah, I think it was quite interesting, but I'll move on to some other stuff now. I want to catch up on the chat too. Yeah, Palantir, I think, is going to be a big problem coming up, and we barely even know what they're working on right now because their partnership with the government, we think like of it, mostly as government, or the government is using Palantir now, and that is a problem to some extent, and that is happening. But the bigger problem is that Palantir is getting a lot of data from the government, and then they are going to be able to use that in ways that for themselves, for other dictators around the world, probably, and for this regime as well. So the situation that I've been covering all week in Minneapolis, Minnesota, is continuing to get crazy. There haven't been any big flashpoints that I've seen since Jake Lang tried to start all that trouble over the weekend, I believe. But there is this ongoing occupation that's happening there. And there was an announcement today that the Minneapolis police, put together this press conference, and they were talking about how multiple members of their department have been pulled over by ICE when they were off duty, basically because they were racially profiled. Let's listen to this real quick. This was a press conference earlier today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Ruley, Police Chief of the City of Brooklyn Park. Behind me is a bunch of amazing police chiefs that are here in support of a very short but very important message that we want to share with you. What you won't hear from any of us today is rhetoric of abolish ICE or that there shouldn't be immigration enforcement. The truth is, immigration enforcement is necessary for our national security and for local security. But how it's done is extremely important.
See, these people are still chuds, you know what I mean? And even they're having a problem.
In fact, we have a long history of working exceptionally well with our federal partners, including ICE agents, and we have seen the best of them perform their job extremely well in the past. With that said, recently, as the last 2 weeks,
Oh my God. News Nation, who streamed this press conference, put the church thing in the big screen while this is happening, which has nothing to even do with that. Because a pastor was apparently a regional director for an ICE division.
As law enforcement community have been receiving endless complaints about civil rights violations in our streets from U.S. citizens. What we're hearing is they're being stopped in traffic stops or on the street with no cause and being forced to demand paperwork to determine if they are here legally. As this went on over the past 2 weeks, we started hearing from our police officers the same complaints as they fell victim to this while off duty. Every one of these individuals.
That is wild. Something gonna I feel like something might happen between the cops and ICE at this point, because of the fact that there's probably a turf war situation going on. You know what I mean?
Is a person of color who has had this happen to them. In Brooklyn Park, one particular officer that shared her story with me was stopped as she passed ICE going down the roadway. When they boxed her in, they demanded her paperwork, of which she's a U.S. citizen and clearly would not have any paperwork. When she became concerned about the rhetoric and the way she was being treated, she pulled out her phone. In an attempt to record the incident, the phone was knocked out of her hands, prevented her from recording it. The officer had their guns drawn during this interaction.
So ICE pulled a gun on a cop, knocked a phone out of her hand, and were asking her for her papers.
And after the officer became so concerned, they were forced to identify themselves as a Brooklyn Park police officer in hopes of slowing the incident and de-escalating the incident down. The agents then immediately left after hearing this, making no other comments, no other apologies, just got in their vehicles and left. I wish I could tell you that this was an isolated incident. In fact, many of the chiefs standing behind me have similar incidents with their off-duty officers. This isn't just important because it happened to off-duty police officers, but what it did do is we know that our officers know what the Constitution is, they know what right and wrong is, and they know when people are being targeted, and that's what they were. If it is happening to our officers, it pains me to think of how many of our community members are falling victim to this every day. It has to stop.
Yeah, if it happened to multiple cops, imagine how many people it's happening to. That's insane. People are just getting pulled up on. And a lot of the reason might have to do with this. This is from the Wall Street Journal, which always has a paywall, but at least there's a little bit of a summary here. ICE agents get additional rewards based on their arrest. Those rewards count even if the person is released without charges. This is why they're just grabbing people up and, not even caring what's going on because they're getting paid regardless. They don't care if somebody is released. And oh yeah, I wanted to also follow up on, remember the disabled woman that was pulled out of the car? She actually is starting to give interviews now. And her situation is really crazy. Like she can walk, but she also like walks with a cane, and she's also autistic. So she said she was extremely confused by the different commands that the guys were yelling at her. And she said that she couldn't even see who was talking to her because of the audio processing issues. And because of the fact that they had things over their face, she couldn't understand what was going on. And I'm sure it filled her with a ton of anxiety. So let's check out this interview. I think it's an okay interview, but there was one part that kind of pissed me off because she she really starts to cook in this, and they try to gracefully change the subject because she's about to say, like, in a society that treats people like, undesirables and stuff, like this has happened in history before. And she's like, let me talk about something else. And I'm like, yeah, of course.
By now, you've probably seen this video from Minneapolis, a woman being dragged from her car while driving through a protest against President Trump's immigration crackdown. She was arrested 2 blocks from where an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good a week before. You heard her screaming, "I'm disabled," as agents carried her by her arms and her legs from her own car. Tonight, we know her name, Alia Rahman. And in just a minute, you'll hear from her for the first time in
a woman who's disabled. It pisses me off.
Before these agents dragged you from your car.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Laura. And happy birthday, Dr. King. I'm really happy that you asked this question, right? Because I have been so concerned that folks might be distracted from the real issue at hand by instead debating why I proceeded slowly through a militarized traffic jam full of pedestrians and a cacophony of conflicting instructions. I was on my way to the doctor. I was on a main road that is a direct road from my house to the parking lot. Suddenly there's traffic in the road. There are vehicles blocking it ahead, vehicles that later I understood were ICE vehicles. People around me trying to understand what to do. And I think that you see the rest.
So you weren't, I mean, in the beginning of the video, you see the federal agents saying something to you before you were dragged out. They say that you were given what they call repeated warnings. I just heard you say this cacophony of conflicting commands. What were they saying to you?
The commands that she says are interesting, and I've seen these in a ton of different videos, which is basically where they tell you that they give you a threat while also telling you to move. So they say, move or I'll tase you. And it's very weird.
What did you understand to be happening?
Well, I think I didn't understand what was happening, right? I am a disabled person who has autism, right? That is a big piece of this. But I think even someone who doesn't have the kind of auditory processing challenges I do would not know what to do with the sentence, move. I will break your effing window. And then back and forth between move, get out, trying to open my door, more threats of breaking a window, which I don't understand the functional purpose of. And it's not a warning, it's a threat of violence that really shouldn't be packaged with an instruction. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to tell you about what my ears hear in that situation. But in my ears, my autism also comes with an auditory sorting challenge where multiple human voices at like a loud party or on a chaotic street all sound like they're the person talking to me. So that's one reason, you see me looking and trying to identify which lips are talking to me. But of course, that's not possible because ICE officers wear things that cover their mouths and faces except for their eyes, right?
So it is so informative for you to explain what it was personally like for you, for us to have watched the video and now to understand at least a part of what you were experiencing in that, because there is a conflicting report from their vantage point that tries to explain what you were thinking or feeling, and you've done it yourself. But I want to be clear, you say you were not there to protest ICE. You were there on your way to an appointment, and you stopped in the traffic, and I got the conflicting reports and commands. Were you there to protest ICE? Had you ever protested ICE before in that arena?
No.
So when you went that day and you were
Oh no.
before in that arena?
Yeah, she right here. So the thing that I was going to say was there have been multiple people at this point who have had nothing to do with the protests that have like gotten really messed up. She ended up having to go to the hospital after this. And then there was another guy that had like 5 kids in his car and a baby, and they shot tear gas into his vehicle. And he's like, I don't even give a shit about this. And he's like, oh, I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like that. I'm sorry. But like, so you could tell that he wasn't like a protester, you know? So yeah.
One, I experienced a very specific set of dehumanization practices during the 6 stages of detention and processing that I counted before I went unconscious and was taken out in an ambulance. Number 2, during every one of those stages, I clocked ICE agents doing things that indicated they were not aware of what their job was or how to do it. Lots of, where's this? What do we do next? You know,
Really?
agents had to stop at all 5 stages. Agents had to stop, ask someone else what to do, where basic things were. There were local staff who seemed to know some of that thing, but I distinctly heard 2 of them at one point say to each other, we don't want to step on ICE's toes, when I was trying to get medical care. And the third is that the practices I experienced with like my own body, ears, and eyes.
So there were people who were agents who were working on in this facility who were saying, I don't know what to do. I don't want to step on ICE's toes. Like, aren't you supposed to be ICE? Like, what is going on here?
Do not make sense to me as an immigration or public safety strategy, because they make things less safe. And honestly, I was not separated from a citizen of any other country. I think people believe this is just immigrants in there, and it is not. I was told that if I were a normal human, nothing would be a problem.
Yeah, when she was telling them that she had, like, you know, why she didn't respond to them the way that she wanted them to, that you know, she told them that she was autistic and disabled and stuff, and then they said if you were a normal person, then you wouldn't have a problem. These people are eugenicists, many of them. They believe in all this crazy race science bullshit and all this, you know, thing about undesirables weighing down the rest of the gene pool and all this crazy bullshit that really should have been eradicated from society a long time ago as a concept. Like the fact that we have allowed this kind of shit to creep in to where it has gotten this popular to where it has taken over the government is gross.
They said that to
We have now heard from, oh yeah. You know, when I asked for disability accommodations, and I said, did anybody bring my cane with me from the car? I need that to walk, not stand, but walk, because my balance is bad. They said, there's no canes here. They stood me up in leg irons and said, walk, push my back. Walk, you can do it. Nobody said
that is so fucked up. Like,
maybe we should find something else. There was no medical screening. I was never once asked for my ID, even told I was under arrest, never charged.
Wow.
And when I sat there and somebody finally noticed I was not able to balance even sitting. And they said, I think there might've been a wheelchair around here the other day, because I kept asking, can you at least get a wheelchair? People said, I don't even know if we have those. That's not the answer to that question. That's never should be happening. And when they put me in the wheelchair, finally, an officer said, wait, you were driving, right? So your legs do work.
What?
You know, I refrain from saying, I refrain from saying, hey, have you ever seen a handicap parking spot, sir? But the thing is, right, people are going to say, well, none of that stuff is illegal. It's just mean. But I have read too many books to think that things are okay when this level of dehumanization is happening, because it means officers are probably trying to get through their day when they have been given orders that are not righteous and they actually hurt people.
Alexa,
Yeah, so she just like dropped major truth on this situation about how this kind of treatment of people with disabilities is a historical part of fascism. And now this news anchor just completely changes the subject.
I have to ask you, and Ali, you have to forgive me. My own sister is mobility impaired, and she drives with the assistance. Had to accommodate and adapt her car so many different times to be able to still function and live in the standard that she wants to. I get emotional thinking about it, but my blood is boiling thinking about that experience. So can you just describe from the legal perspective of it?
Yeah.
She was detained. The DHS.
So yeah, she turns to ask the lawyer like a legal question, which doesn't really enlighten anything. And look, you can see on her, she's like pissed. She's like, yeah, fuck you. I can tell. I know. I'm sure she is. All right. So this is another one I saw that is disturbing. Like all of these things together are I hate when I open these things. Alabama uses Japanese American internment era law to charge immigrants who don't self-register. So some of you may not know that during World War II, there were technically concentration camps in the United States. They call them internment camps because they want to separate them from the camps in other countries where people were just slaughtered in large numbers. I think that is a big misunderstanding these days, is like, you don't have to go to that length for it to be called a concentration camp, you know what I mean, or an ethnic cleansing. You don't have to go to that point. There are stages of that stuff, and these are things that have existed in United States history for a long time, and that's actually where the Nazis got most of their ideas from, is from this side of the Atlantic. Alabama is finding new ways to criminally charge immigrants. Well, I'm not new ways, old ways, I guess. Federal courts in the state are using a law last applied during the U.S. internment of people of Japanese descent during World War II to charge immigrants who don't register themselves. The Trump administration has attempted to effectively criminalize unlawful presence in the United States, said immigration attorney Dan Upton, to facilitate immigrants' own eventual removal. The Trump administration reinterpreted the law in 2025, and a handful of states have started pursuing charges. Yeah, and of course, spokesperson for the U.S. Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement did not respond to a question for comment about the growing use of registration requirements in Alabama. So, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of states are on board with this. Some states are actually working with ICE, and I think they're not being invaded to the level that the other ones are. I think it's this kind of tactic that he's trying to use, like he does with everybody, with like leverage and such. But there was something that was quite important on this topic. Remember where she said that she wasn't separated from anybody from any other country. It didn't seem like a immigration situation. It was just like a mass holding pen, essentially. And we've heard from other detainees that they had a wing for U.S. citizens in one. But here we have in this interview that popped off today, Tom Homan saying that ICE arrests U.S. citizens all the time. He kind of makes it like, if they're criminals is the way that he spins it. But
Do you have any idea?
The people that they're arresting right now aren't just criminals. It's a deflection. I mean, people are concerned about the random ass people that you're arresting because you happen to smash into their car or they filmed you.
What percentage of people you're detaining turn out to be American citizens?
Well, first, is ICE arresting U.S. citizens? ICE arrests U.S. citizens every day for trafficking and smuggling and drug distribution and weapons dealing. ICE enforces 400 laws and statutes. So, yeah, ICE do arrest U.S. citizens. Are we targeting U.S. citizens as part of this immigration enforcement? Not unless you are protesters that crossed the line and committed impediment, interference, assault, so. To say we're targeting U.S. citizens for...
I don't think anybody has assaulted an ICE officer. They've said that verbal assaults are up 6,000%. We watched a guy say last night.
Immigration enforcement, that's just false accusation. But U.S. citizens are arrested if they violate the law and violate one of the 400 statutes that ICE, enforces.
All right, entertain some.
Little bit wild. See what else we got. I saved it since we were going over other stuff the past couple days, and there's been a lot going on with ICE. I saved quite a few links. I'm not sure which ones. Ooh, this one is quite relevant. I wanted to go through this thread because I think that this is from like a military researcher, and it kind of compares what's happening with ICE to the Russian secret police that developed under Putin. So let's take a look at this thread. Russian law enforcement agents started wearing masks to carry out their duties. It soon became a standard tactic to intimidate and extort those seen as opponents of the regime, and became known in Russian as the mask show. During the Soviet era, there was no need for law enforcement officers to hide their faces. They were agents of an all-powerful state, which, although corrupt, had huge resources to repress crime and political dissidents. This changed in the 1990s when the chaotic collapse of the communist economy led to the rise of widespread and deadly gangsterism. The police came under direct threat from well-armed criminals. To deal with this, some officers began wearing masks to conceal their identities. The pioneers were the Federal Tax Police Service. I will add that wasn't Putin like one of these thugs, I thought? The pioneers were the Federal Tax Police Service, which was established in 1993 as a replacement for the old Fifth Directorate of the KGB. Its officers soon became notorious for their baklava-wearing raids on the offices of Russian businessmen. While the FSNP was abolished in 2003 under Vladimir Putin, after Vladimir Putin became president, its tactics were widely copied by other state law enforcement agencies as the Putin regime sought to bring the economy and society under its control through intimidation and extortion. Under Putin, the mafia was either sidelined or brought under the state control through the use of masked raids against companies suspected of corruption, which was and still is extremely widespread or associated with political opponents. So, I mean, this reminds me of ICE agents carrying those papers out of those daycare centers when they don't have nothing to do with forensic accounting or the IRS or whatever. And the other thing here is that the mafia was either sidelined or brought under state control. I really, really believe that a lot of the extreme right-wing white supremacist militias that have been organizing over the past 20 years or so, a large percentage of them are in ICE. Patriot Front, Proud Boys, and much more obscure ones. So maybe not the mafia, but certainly organized crime to some degree. So I'm just like pointing out some of the parallels here. There's not, it's not a 100% parallel because this, these practices existed before Putin became into power, but I still think that it's quite interesting to see how it developed. Mass raids became such a common feature of the Russian business and political life during the 1990s and 2000s that they were nicknamed mask shows after the popular comedy show of the time. Mask shows continue to be used regularly in Russia, often against political dissidents and suspected supporters of Ukraine. There is no longer much threat against the lives of officers. When they say suspected supporters of Ukraine, I would imagine that that is any anti-war activist. They probably do the same thing they do over there, where if you're against war, they say that you're supporting the other person that they want to bomb, and then they, label you as a traitor. There is no longer much of a threat against the lives of officers, but they have learned how useful masks can be as a means of state intimidation. The use of mask shows played a key part in killing Russian democracy under Putin. Russia's experience shows that while masking may start with a limited purpose, it soon becomes a key tool for bringing society under authoritarian control through its intimidatory effect. So yeah, that's quite interesting. And it says this is a common practice among Ukrainian soldiers and has been since the war started in 2004. That's the top comment. And then he responds, baklavas were literally invented for military use to protect. Oh, okay. So he's talking about soldiers. That's different than cops. Let's see. Yeah, so I thought that was quite interesting, the parallels there. I mean, there's a lot of parallels with what has happened to Russia in the past couple decades, for sure. Let's see what we got here. While joking about, oh yeah, so this is just a cruelty video. I might skip over that one because I saved so many things. So, ICE agents apparently went to storm a pizzeria where money is being collected for victims of ICE. When they fail, they still throw tear gas grenade at people. Street terror by heavily armed militias.
To the agents, who are believed to be with Border Patrol. This surveillance video shows the moment agents arrived on the scene. As one agent rushes to the front door, another appears to step in to stop the first officer from entering. The officers returned to their vehicle and deployed a gas canister before driving away.
They're just lighting up a whole street because 15 people were around the business yelling at them.
The restaurant owners say the agents did not have a warrant when they demanded entry. They don't know why the restaurant was targeted, but just a few days prior, they announced a fundraiser to help people affected by the ongoing federal operations in the area.
So they're just targeting people who are politically aligned against them, essentially, or who are raising money for the people that they're victimizing.
We put a target on ourselves with that by helping people, which is sickening.
The restaurant has raised more than $100,000 so far.
We defended this community. They don't belong here. They're not this community. They're not what we believe in. We support and love each other, and you can see from that video exactly what happens when they try to with us.
CNN has reached out to the Department of Homeland Security for more information about the incident.
I also got an update on the story that is continuing with Native Americans getting caught up in these ICE raids. This is one of the men who were detained for 4 hours after he identified himself, offered his tribal ID, certificate of Indian blood, and birth certificate. They told him that he must be stealing someone's identity and that they would get his family next. As he described it, I was treated as if I hadn't earned our place here. This is our place. This is beyond racism. They hate us like we were pests and rodents in our home, but this is our home, he says. Let's see what he says here.
Work shirt, standing outside of my ride, and all these rides pulled in one after another. The Suburbans, they all get out, and they start yelling at me to face my vehicle and put my hands on the top of the vehicle. So I'm all right. Where I'm from, you learn that when it comes to the law, you do what you're told, otherwise things escalate. So I'm being compliant. About 4 or 5 rides down, they pull another guy out of his truck and they drag him on the ground, literally drag him on the ground. And then they toss me down, knees on the back, facing the pavement. That's when I heard him say immigration control. So I'm like, all right, hey, I'm full-blooded Native. My wallet's in the car. I have my ID in there, my social security card. The backpack in the back seat has my CIB and my birth certificate. And thinking I'm good after all that. And they put me in one of the units. I'm in there for a couple of minutes, and then they start pulling off. So I was like, why are we leaving? You guys have my identification. And that's when they're like, well, that car, it came back under another name. It's not listed under the name that you gave us, which leads us to believe you stole the vehicle and you stole your identity as well. And so I started telling them, hey, I have a job, I have bills, I have kids. And their response was, oh, we'll get them next. Oh, I got picked up by ICE because I look how I do. But I'm not going to lie, man. I'm not going to put on some kind of hard front. This is something that has me angry, stressed, and worried. I got to look over my shoulder all the time now. And what I went through is only a mild taste of what so many others are going through. And it's at some point, as a human being, you have to come down to a realization that it ain't right. It dehumanizes you to be treated like that. It's like no matter who you are, if you're waking up at 3, 4, 5 in the morning to build this country, you're treated like a stray dog. You don't belong here. You haven't earned your place here. And not only that, we don't need to earn a place here. This is where we're from. It's where I was born. My parents were born. My grandparents, great-great-grandparents, and all.
So this guy is not one of the 4 that were taken from the Red Lake area. This is a different one. Well, I know this is a different person, but I don't know if he's from the Red Lake area or not. 3 of the people that were arrested last week in Red Lake reservation were arrested, but 1 is still missing and they don't know where he is. And that is concerning because a lot of people have been fast-track deported to random ass places. It's insane what has been happening. Let's see what we got here. I'm trying to look through some of these other ones and also catch up on the chat as well. It's I got to get used to it. It's going faster nowadays. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, not that one. Let's see what we got here. This is apparently somebody who was a plant, and they think that he was a federal agent. I haven't watched this video yet, but I saw it going around. I know, I think I saw Kyle covering it. Let's see.
Okay. Okay, get up. Get your ass up. You good? You got nothing? Okay. That's all they asked. Watch out. That's all they asked. He's one of us. Okay. He's one of us. Okay, good. You all right, dude? You all right? Come on, breathe. He's one of us. How do we know? How we know? I was with him earlier. Why you get ran out earlier? I don't know. He's one of us. I'm with them. Trust me. Okay. Wonderful people on there. He's with us the whole time. You touched us, you all right, man? Move back.
Oh shit.
Back up. Yeah, save your Nazi. Put him in your Nazi van. Go get him some help. He needs a little bit of fucking mental health there. Don't he? Nobody got guns. There you go. Look me in the eye.
That's crazy. They just popped out of a white van as soon as that guy started getting found out. But somebody was trying to cover for him? That's kind of weird.
You gonna look me in the eye when you spray me? You gonna be just like the fucking bad that Nobody got guns. Don't be scared. You gotta look at me after the phone. Your fucking neighbor. Put the gun down. Everybody got cameras. Everybody got cameras. Have that and then you bring the bad guys. Yeah, I got it. You don't want with the gun down. Everybody got cameras.
Busted. That's insane. Wow. Saw this article here too as well. There was a guy who was choked and killed in one of these what is this? One of these detention centers. I think that because this is still loading. Oh my god. I really gotta get on the ad blocker game. Well, anyway, that article did say that they're trying to deport the only 2 witnesses to that. And because these people have spoke with the yeah, they've sorry, I was trying to go through things. They've spoke with the media, and people have found out that this guy was essentially killed by an ICE agent in one of these detention places. And now they're trying to get deported.
I assume you have a knife.
Oh yeah, this is an interaction where somebody was stopped for their accent. And let's see. Yeah, I think that those are all of them. Let me catch up on the chat. Why is the different sheriff department rolling around like that wasn't the sheriff department, I don't think. That was the that was ICE, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Trump has been declining big time. The press conference he gave today was so batshit. I can't believe that. I mean, I've never had much faith in the politicians in this country, but we look so incredibly stupid, and yeah, it's not looking great. It's going to take a long time for us to recover from this, as far as like, how people look at us when we go abroad and stuff, like as individuals. Yeah, definitely ICE. He was trying to start shit. That's probably why they identified him, because he was trying to instigate. And I mean, if this is Patriot Front and Proud Boy people out there, then they definitely just want to crack skulls, and they want to arrest people that they don't like. Yeah, it's wild. I'll check if I had anything else for this. What is this here? Mississippi's ICE experience illustrates how race and geography determine who gets deported. In Detention Alley, immigrants of color face the most ICE raids and the harshest courtroom outcomes. The specter of race is never far removed from America's immigration system. Last week, President Donald Trump lowered the nation's annual refugee cap from 125,000 to just 7,500, reserving most of those slots for white South Africans fleeing what he described as political persecution. Oh my God, yeah, I remember that. It was the latest iteration of an immigration system that, since Trump's inauguration, has favored whiteness and overtly targeted people of color. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious if black cops are getting pulled over in Minneapolis and having guns pulled on them. Immigrations and custom enforcement. I think there was some kind of stat in here that I had found. It's abundantly clear to me at this point that ICE carries out its mandate through racial profiling. Yes, of course. Mississippi has around 7,000 foreign-born residents. Yeah, so we're not hearing much about what's going on in these southern states, but I saw a couple of posts and TikToks and stuff like that where people were reporting heavy checkpoints, like because of the police departments working with ICE, they're doing like DUI checkpoints that aren't really DUI checkpoints. They're actually immigration checkpoints. So that is definitely very sketch. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I love my Canadian brothers and sisters because they help us out here and there. Checking out the chat. Well, yeah, I think that's all I got for today. Yeah, I went to Canada for the first time a couple months ago, and I thought it was amazing. I really liked it there. Um, I think I hope I'll still be able to visit there after all this shit with this president. Um, you know, and usually I tell people I'm Canadian when I go outside of the country, just because I'm like embarrassed by this place. And that was, even not during Trump. But yeah, oh, thanks for the reminder, Rowdy. If you have been checking out my videos, you like hanging out with the community, definitely subscribe. It really helps out a lot. I'm trying to get this channel started after being away from kind of, activism, journalism, sharing my thoughts with the world for like 5 years. Um, you know, I backed away because the communities that I had really grew up around in the early 2010s and early 2000s online had really changed and shifted, and I didn't know how to handle it, what to do about it, so I just kind of backed away, and I've felt kind of crazy these years. But now that I see like, kind of a community forming around the work that I'm doing, and it makes me feel like, oh, actually, maybe I'm not so crazy, and there are actually other people out there to connect with that. Well, they got like right wing and stuff, like the conspiracy crowd and stuff got really right wing, and I grew up in those circles when I was very young on the internet from like AOL times, because I was really interested in aliens when I was a kid. And um, it was tough for me. And then all the stuff with like COVID was happening right after I was recovering from cancer. So it was just like it was a weird time. So and with how divisive everything got with that, it was I didn't even know um how to do content and journalism at that point. And I had to like figure out my own stuff. So I had to figure out like the day job situation and do all that. Oh, thank you so much, Zombie. We really appreciate that. Um, but yeah, so it took me a while to kind of get my own shit together. And then just with everything going on in the world, I just started being like, I need to just say things again, because just doing just going through life, watching all this from the sidelines and not speaking out about it, which I had done my whole life and been used to. It feels so much better to be back, and that, you know, oh yeah. So no, there's definitely hope. You know, yeah, there's definitely hope. I'm really sorry to hear that, and I'm sure you'll be fine. Like you know, we've come a long way with cancer. It's not the kind of thing that it once was. I mean, it's still serious, but it's, there's there's a lot of chance. But yeah, much love to you on that, and you know, definitely, I'm sure you'll get through it. And since I've been better, I've talked to multiple people who have kind of experienced the same situation, and most of them are doing pretty good now. It's non-metastatic bladder cancer. They just gotta sniff up things. Yeah, yeah, awesome, awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, and I hope that everything goes well. It is tough, man. You know, uh, I'm glad I made it through it. I think it's been 7, 8 years now or something like that, because it was like right before, it was like 2018 or something when I finished my treatment, which I ran away from for the first 2 years, and, it was kind of a mistake there. Uh, but yeah, and it took a while to figure out what I was gonna do, because it really did feel like all the communities that I was connected with online had went in a different direction than me politically, and I didn't realize that I could just, come on YouTube and start doing things because I just saw it as this instrument, like I got to start this whole new platform and stuff. And then I was writing for some sites like Anti-Media, Free Thought Project that got totally like wiped off of their social media, like Facebook, which was really big for them back in the day, and Twitter at the same time. It was like a big takedown of all these anti-war, anti-cop websites, and they also took down some Trump stuff too. They took down like some left-wing stuff, some right-wing stuff, some anarchy stuff, and we got caught up in that. So yeah, that was pretty discouraging too. But um, everything worked out the way it should have, and I'm glad to be back at it. But yeah, yeah, definitely. And keep me no, I'm happy to be trust me, it feels so much better to be back and to just now I'm able to vent every day and complain about this stuff that I'm angry about that's happening in the world and feel a little bit more sane at the end of it. And definitely keep me posted on your progress too, Zombie. I really I wish you the best, and I'll be pulling for you for sure. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. That was a part of the anti-war thing, Daniel, for sure. Um, yeah, and hopefully, I'm sure they're trying something crazy with that, with the midterms for sure. All right, y'all. Well, I appreciate you hanging out, and it's cool to chat with you a little bit beyond the bullshit news at the end of this. I try to make a habit out of that. I dig it. Have a good night, and hopefully tomorrow I'll have a preview of the next video. Catch y'all later. Peace.